Hello, and here's the roundup for the 23rd. There's actually quite a few signals yesterday. I did get asked by a couple of people what reaction of stock markets would be to terror, and for whatever reason, since we've started getting far more of them in Europe, the market tends to be up on that day. Quite often knee jerks down, but then ends up. Doesn't appear to be a lot of logic in that, but that's I think it's just a point to remember. Unusual news events can cause you to have a bit of an emotional or a knee-jerk reaction. It's important to just see it for what it is. I'm going to start with the E-mini. Talked yesterday, basically coming up to this weekly level, which is also the weekly level at 23.99. So that's pretty much where we are now at this moment. On the other indexes, not really much to report. So the Nasdaq, again, extending higher. None of the support points have moved to the top of the trend. Quick look at FTSE, and that was an example. Obviously that would be the one that you'd think got the most reaction yesterday. Pretty much closed unchanged, and it's pretty much unchanged again today, so not a lot happening there. Australian market, we'd had a buy signal at support a few days ago, and it's pretty quiet, not really much going on there. If we move on to where I suppose the most action is, and that's in the Eurodollar. Now, we've said that it's been very, very strong, broke up last week, extended higher, and we've had the first sign of weakness yesterday, and we've had a timing point today. So what's happened there is we have a UFO, which is the blue arrow, and then the black square is a time continuation sell. Resistance has not moved to the top though, in any way, shape or form, and it hasn't done on the futures either. And so for longs, that would simply be a warning sign. So it would be take some partial profits, but you wouldn't necessarily get out of the whole position. What we would need to see for more extended weakness is the ability to close below the relativity level, which is at 111.45. So that's your focus for the rest of the week. That euro weakness has appeared in some of the cross rates as well. So if I go to the euro pound on the futures, and what's happened is we've had a time continuation sell, that black square, and we also topped out at the weekly relativity level. So once again, it's not a resistance as such. We're not at a point. So it would be for only very aggressive people who want to get involved, or we do have some people who have hedging responsibilities, currency exposures, and for them it is actionable. So they would be putting a hedge on based on that signal. They would lift that hedge if we close above the relativity high, which is at 86.71, so a fair way away at the moment. Other things that happened on currencies, go to dollar CAD. And we had a time continuation buy, again not at support, so it's just a warning sign to the weakness that's happened. What we're really interested in is that 136.00 level. Weakness in the euro, not surprisingly, conversely transferred itself to a positive signal on the dollar index. Once again, not at support, but it is a warning sign. And that transferred itself into gold. Now the rally in gold over the last week or so was very much currency related, so you can see that it's almost an inverse of the dollar index. But having watched gold closely last week, and also silver, because we had a slingshot move on that, it somewhat underperformed. We've had a time continuation sell. We really need to get below that 1243 point by the end of the week to suggest that more weakness is happening. Ideally, I'd like to see that movement in the euro dollar as well, so I can connect the currencies with the precious metals. We go on to silver. We stopped, I think it was 2 ticks short of that 1733 point, so the high was 1731, but not a negative signal. So there was no signal on yesterday's bar. 1733 is still very much the reference point. We need to close the week above there to open up space up to 1870. Sugar is a market where we've had a position on, and that position has been exited today, and the reason for that is we had a pretty sharp reversal yesterday, so what's called a time continuation sell, and you can argue that the trend is still, actually the major trend is still down. We're threatening to close below the weekly level already, taken the profit on that position. Still interested in a slingshot back up, but we await to see whether we get a signal. Price has definitely got to hold that 1524 point, whereas the weekly support has gone to the lows. There's a couple of other things just on grains. Not one that people trade very often. This is bean oil. Had a sell as a continuation. Had a sell as a continuation yesterday. That red square. Need to really break this final support at 32.08. If we do that, then what that does is open up the downside all the way to 28.49. So monitoring bean oil to see whether it's going to close below that final support. We also had a signal on wheat, which has been moribund for a considerable amount of time. Not really that interested in that. It does put a negative bias on price, but we're really just ambling around and not doing very much. We need to take out the 416 low, and then there is no support. So we'll be watching that. And if I look at the relativity points, the monthly relativity level and the quarterly relativity level are pretty close together. So ideally I'd want to see it take out that 412 level. So there's a fair bit to do before you get overly negative on that. Finally, Apple opened on the highs yesterday and just reversed back down. Not much to report there. Okay, so that's it for now. Thanks.